That would be funny if you did that.
I know. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Co-Creation Station, the podcast where we talk about spiritual magic, the law of attraction, the art of allowing, the mind-body-spirit connection, and how best to enjoy this mystical, miraculous, mysterious, crazy, sometimes confounding, but always incredible journey we call life. My name is Collin. I am a teacher, tarot oracle card reader, and I am the singer and guitarist in the band Red Treasure in Los Angeles. I'm located in beautiful, sunny North Hollywood, California.
My name is Stephanie Orlina, and I am a transformational life coach, and I help people shift away from negative thinking, and it transforms their lives. And I am in extremely warm San Diego, California today.
Which, is like a country town. Um,
You
just gonna
liked that
keep.
earlier,
I'm
huh?
gonna keep bringing things, jokes that we do in friend time
Okay.
into the podcast without context until people just get so annoyed with me. It won't take long. It'll be like next episode that'll happen. But anyway, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you're listening to the audio version on Spotify, the Apple Podcast app, or wherever you get your podcasts, and thank you so much for watching us. If you're watching us on the Co-Creation Station YouTube channel, if you feel called to like this episode, give us a review, subscribe to or follow the audio podcast, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, we encourage you to do so because it really helps people find our show, and we really would appreciate it if you would do that for us. Also, we would love to hear from you. If you're watching the YouTube version, you can leave us a comment down below, ask us questions. We'll try to answer in a future episode. If you're listening to the audio version and you'd like to contact us, you can email us at cocreationstation1111. That's all together with no abbreviations or spaces at gmail.com. Each week we start our discussion from a different jumping off point. And as usually happens, we were in our friend time that we had before the podcast started, and all of a sudden, you started telling a story about your week, Stephanie, some things that happened to you, and then I started opening my mouth, and I was like, "Oh, I'm starting the podcast," and I was like, "No, keep talking," and then 10 seconds later, you started talking to me the podcast, and I was like, "No, no, no, let me hit record." So, but then we have to do this like 3 minute thing where we get interrupted. But what I was going to say, hopefully you can remember what you were going to say. But what I was going to say is you were describing the story you were telling me about your week, which was a happy story of some things that happened to you. Um, you had a structure for a particular day. What you kept saying, the detail you kept tossing out was you were going to work in your office on your business from 10 a.m. to noon that day, and it just wasn't happening. Like you had a late start in the morning, you weren't moving as fast as you had planned to, um,
And I was having
and
fun. I was enjoying doing what I was
yeah,
doing, and I had no desire to go into the office.
yeah. And what you were saying is, but you did have like, it sounded like, if I'm not putting words in your mouth, you had like a voice in the back of your head. The volume wasn't very high, but it was something like, well, you said you work from 10 to 4.
Oh yeah, I was having this inner conflict of like,
Yeah,
you committed, I've made a decision like,
yeah,
to be in the office at this certain time, and it wasn't happening that day. And the day before, some things had come up. I was taking care of some personal business, and I couldn't do it as usual. And so, yeah, I was feeling really guilty. I'm being a bad girl. You said da 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 da, and but at the same time, rolling with like I was directed here. I was talking. My Dr. Chris, we've had on before, my chiropractor, had been telling me about Dave Grohl's The Storyteller, and so I'm always like, because we love music, we both it's something we have in common, and
yes.
I
And
love
we
Dave
both love Dave
Grohl.
Grohl, lead
Yeah, we
singer
all love Dave Grohl, right? Foo
and
Fighters.
leader of Foo Fighters. Yes.
Yes, and so I finally decided I was looking it up, and I like books, but I was like looking at the Audible, and so I got it, and I was listening to it and enjoying it, and
Does he narrate the audiobook of
he
that?
does. That's partly why I got it too, because
I love that.
she's like, it's great. It's like he's talking to me, and da, da, da. So, yeah. But having this conflict and just, deciding, it was like almost 10 o'clock. I'm still in my PJs, just doing breakfast dishes. And so I texted a friend. I said, I'm just committing. I'm going to be in the office for 2 hours today. It's not going to happen from 10 to noon, but it will happen. And and then just continued to go about my morning and doing those things that I was led to do, what felt good. And so I was watching
Mm.
videos on YouTube and whatever's, and listening to Dave Grohl's book and listening to music and really enjoying the ease and flow. And then finally, got into the office around 2 and did some things, what have you. But, and then a friend of mine had invited me on her friends and family Apple um, TV subscription. And so I was doing that and started watching Ted Lasso and really loved it because some friends had talked about it. And so I had a really great day, other than this low grade feeling of like I shouldn't be doing this, as you said. But mostly feeling really good because I was doing things that were and made me feel good. I was interested in, and it was enjoyable. And then while that was going on, I was also thinking about getting nibbles, like texting Dominique and just being like, "Hey, can I get nibbles this weekend?" And
Can you explain who Nibbles and Dominique are?
so Nibbles is my granddaughter's dog, my granddaughter Dominique. She's 19, and so now she's working, she has a boyfriend, and so Nibbles is her. I mean, she's had him since he was a puppy, and he's 9 now, and so her lifestyle is such where he doesn't get as much time and attention from her. And so I've taken him, and I'll have him for weeks at a time, and I love it. And it's kind of like my part-time dog, which is perfect because I don't want a full-time pet. And so I was looking at my schedule for the weekend. I'm like, oh, I can't go there, they live in Temecula. And I didn't want to be like, hey, yeah, can I get him? And if you happen to be in San Diego, if any family member is, could you drop him off? And I just was like, oh, forget it. But I really wanted to see him because it had been a few weeks, and just decided, okay, whatever, just let it go. and then and then around 5:30, my daughter called me and she said, "Hey, mom, we're going to be in San Diego. I wonder if we could drop off Nibbles." And I just started laughing, and I'm like, "Of course." I go, "I've been wanting him. I was going to text Dominique and I just didn't because it didn't work in my schedule." And she goes, "Well, ask and you shall receive." And it was really great because I got to see that energetically I had sent a text out basically.
Mm.
And even though I physically didn't do it, my whole energy was like, I want to see him. I want them to bring him. And then being in that, I'm just going to keep doing what I want to do, but knowing, yes, I've made this commitment and I am going to do it, but I'm not going to do it in the time frame that I wanted. And I was just, listening to the book and watching a show I liked and listening to music, and I was in this state of allowing because I was just feeling so good. And then this thing that I wanted, I was in the receiving mode, that which is the art of allowing, right? It's all about getting into the receiving mode. So it was just a really great example. So then I thought, when I realized that had happened that night, I was like, well, why can't I do that with money? And then it was like, wait a minute, Stephanie, you have.
A lot.
A lot. And the two largest
You
sums
get
I
them in a
ever,
hot tub and
yeah,
concert tickets and
yeah.
tickets to Disneyland and yeah.
And then the two large sums of money that have come into my life, one was $20,000 and the other one was $56,000. Both came in 1 year. And it was all from, I believe, from laughing. I was that year I did that whole laughing stint for
Mm.
months. Um, and so it's just, shifting the story that I tell myself. And yeah, so it was just a great thing of just like, oh yeah, just feel as good as you can.
I think one of the reasons that I latched on in our friend time, I latched on to that story is like it's such a great thing to talk about, is because it's really for me it's continuing the conversation we had not in the immediate previous episode to this, but the two episodes before that where my sister Kelly was on as a guest, and we talked a lot about similar topics on both episodes. But I think of when I think of your 10 a.m. to noon sort of target or goal or whatever you want to call it, your schedule for that day that you had set before the day started. I think about that concept of the grid that Abraham talks about, as when Abraham talks about the grid and how to use that concept to practice the art of allowing and work with the law of attraction to bring good stuff into your life, into your day. What she's talking about, just to recap, I talked about it in most episodes, but what she's talking about is creating a, for me, the concept of the grid is helpful because it helps me delineate or differentiate what is my part as Collin the human, who's flesh and bones and, walking around and is the age I am and all these sorts of things. What's my part in this whole co-creation process, and what is the universe's or source or higher power, whatever you want to refer to it as. And what I love about it is Abraham describes the grid, which is like my part is, it's like I'm building, it's almost like I'm making a garden, a square garden, and I'm just, making sure the edges are, where I want them, like I'm really not going to do the garden in the middle. I'm going to, just make sure there's dirt in this square in my yard, and I'm going to put like little, some sort of little toothpicks around the edge or popsicle sticks or something, just to say this is where I want the garden to be. And then higher power is the one who's going to fill in the grid, is how she talks about it, meaning all the good stuff is going to come in the garden, and I don't really have to do much. I may have to, water it or something, but I'm not going to make the things grow in the garden, right? So I think about that a lot because for me, having no structure whatsoever to my day, my week, my month, I know is not healthy for me because typically, if I don't have any sort of structure, there's some, that's not true. Some days I'm like exhausted from days and days of work, and
Just let go.
I do have some chores around the apartment, but I actually need a full day to just like do whatever. And I do give myself that gift as often as I can. But most days I need some sort of whatever to-do list, calendar, something, just again, for me, what I'm trying to have that be is a grid for my day. Like this is the edges of what I would like to co-create with the universe, and then I'll let the universe fill it in by sticking to this sort of, parameters. However, what your story brings out for me, and I so relate to it, and I think so many people can relate to it. I think if you're trying to understand the art of allowing and the law of attraction and how they work together, it can be really confusing because like the same action can be helpful or not helpful. You can be doing the same physical action and practicing the art of allowing, or not, or actually putting up resistance, doing the opposite of allowing. And it's like, if I can create a plan for my day that feels not perfectly, but feels aligned with what do I really want to accomplish today, like what, I don't necessarily do this all the time, but I do try to, like, not in a dark, negative way, but I try to think, like, if this were my last day on earth, what are the things I would most like to make sure that I did today, and it's usually like talk to a friend and do something creative and, go outside and see the world and all that sort of stuff. But if I create that grid for my day in a way that feels relatively aligned with my higher self, the universe, like it feels right, then I think that's my experience. Like I create the grid, and the universe or higher power, whatever, fills it in with good stuff. I have a great day, whatever. But that's not usually. I'm trying to train myself to do that more often, because I think what I learned from an early age is that making your plan for the day is part of this us as humans with our ego controlling what is going to happen today. And we may not talk about it like that, but it really does feel like that sometimes. And sometimes it's easier for me to hear it from other people. I'll ask somebody like, oh, what are you doing today? And they're like, da 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 da. And I'm like, that's a lot. Like, I don't really think you can get all that done in one day, but they're like, oh no, I'm they'll have some reason. And it's like, but that is like anything else, and we've talked about it endlessly. It's like, if the energy of it, if I make a plan for my day, and this little piece of paper with writing on it feels like a I don't want to say it, like a drill sergeant, like, you better do this by 8 a.m. and you better do this by 10 a.m. then that is me. I've created a plan that actually edged the universe out of the equation.
Yeah.
And I've accidentally tried to convince myself that, oh, I need to, you know, have these things happen in my day, and I'm not going to co-create with the universe. I've made the perfect plan, and they're all going to happen. And that's where my grid is not a grid. It's actually it's just I might as well put up like a roof of resistance over that square because like very little is going to happen. And what I
Or
love about
very
yours,
little of what you really want
what I
is
really
going to
wanted,
happen. Yeah, because stuff will
or
happen.
just
It just probably won't feel that good.
right. And that's
Yeah.
the more important thing is like things that make me feel uncomfortable or uneasy will happen, and things that make me feel good and successful and fulfilled are going to happen less.
Yeah.
But what I love about your story is I feel like you didn't set that 10 to noon as like some drill sergeant thing. You set it as a grid originally. You're like, this is what I would like. You know, I would
Yeah.
like to, I have some things I want to accomplish in my business today.
Yeah.
I feel like 2 hours is a good spot, so 10 to noon. But then when you woke up, it's like that voice that I have that's like, you have to be in your office, 10 to noon, became that, and you heard it, and it was like there, but you didn't like. It's a weird thing because I feel like the thing that would have been wrong to do was then would be to force yourself to go to the office at 10 a.m. Because if that voice is feeling like pressure and negative and then that just means look, you might have been in a beautiful place last night when you made this plan. And you might have, and that 10 to noon last night might have been a grid, like you were aligned, whatever. But the thing about the universe is things change every single moment of every single day. The universe can track how it's changing. We can only react and respond. So it's like basically when I hear you that story that you told, and you tell it really well, I feel like you had the best of intentions setting a grid the day before for your 10 to noon block. But then when you woke up, the universe was like, you know what, Steph, we've got things that have got to happen. And you being in
Yeah.
the office from 10 to noon isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And instead
Yeah.
of fighting that, which is what a lot of people would do, and they would force themselves into the office anyway, you rolled with it. Maybe not perfectly, you
I
know, but you
kept
rolled.
going with what felt good. And
Yeah,
I just was like, I want to feel like, oh, this is really calling me. And I'm just
yeah,
like, but I felt like I had this commitment over here, but I'm like, oh, but this really, it was shiny and bright. And so I
yeah,
just kept doing that, but feeling conflicted. And so, and the other thing I want to mention too is that even though I had some resistance going on and guilt and what have you, all that's kind of those thoughts and feelings are resistance. I was mostly feeling good and enjoying myself.
yeah,
And therefore, law of attraction was responding. And therefore, I had built up momentum. And so my day just kept going really well. It was like it was going better than not.
yeah.
Here's the resistance, but here's my good feeling. And then it just kept getting better and better. And then, it could have been anything. It could have won something on the radio. A friend could have, that I've been wanting to see forever, could come over. But instead, this other thing that I really wanted did happen. And so it was just a great example of the better it gets, the better it gets.
But the
Just like
other,
the worse it gets, the
absolutely,
worse it gets.
yeah, I agree with that 100%. And the other thing that occurs to me when you tell it is that like this is what's tricky for me is like a lot of times I in my conscious logical thinking mind have a lot of difficulty accessing my higher self. My higher
Mm,
self knows what I want
yeah,
pretty much all the time.
yeah.
And therefore if I was able to access my higher self and I made the conscious decision to access my higher self, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's the step that I still don't do sometimes and I need to practice more. Um, but if I go to my higher self, then it's going to know not just what I'm looking to co-create during the day, but it's also going to know what the grid is to do that. Like what is
Yeah,
my part?
yeah.
And in your story, what I hear is the real grid, at least one part of the real grid was, which you did know before it happened, which was you wanted to spend time with Nibbles because Nibbles
Yeah,
makes you happy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so
absolutely.
you knew that before. Now you didn't write that down necessarily. Like you didn't put it on a plan and say,
It was right across my forehead and
hang
in
out with
my heart.
right. But that's the thing is like, I think that's what's kind of challenging for me is like, I do sometimes really need to make a paper plan for my day in the in the conscious physical world.
Yeah.
But the thing is like I often don't ask myself because if you had really, and I'm not being critical of you, but I mean I've done this like a million times and much to much greater degree. But if you had sat down, like when you first woke up in the morning, you sat down and said like, what's the one thing that I really, really my higher self really wants today? Understanding the answer is kind of always to feel good,
Yeah.
but specifically like what do I think in this physical world today would make me feel real good? I would guess that you would have identified really quickly actually that it was like I just want to spend time with Nibbles because he's awesome, right? And so
Well,
that, but the brilliant thing about the universe is even if we create a grid that doesn't work, or which I don't think you did this, but if we create resistance to it, the universe sometimes has ways of delivering it anyway,
well, I feel like
but
it
we have to
did. I
we have to
had
let go. Yeah,
resistance. I had
yeah,
resistance because I was like looking at my schedule and trying to
yeah.
figure out like when could I get him and oh, but this day is that and da 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 da. And then I was just like, oh well, like I can't get him. I can't drive up to Temecula on Friday and blah 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 um and I just went about my business. Like I was out there in the ethers because I'd been feeling it for more than a week that I wanted him and then I was just like, oh well, and just was on the back burner of my head. I kind of looked at it and yeah, it's not going to happen the next few days and then just like whatever and then just proceeded to do these things that I was led to, like higher power, my inner being was inspiring me to do these things, like look up the Dave Grohl book
Mm,
and then look at all these different whatever I did that morning
yeah.
and and I was rolling with it and then you know I was enjoying myself more than
But
not.
I think that's a real important distinction what you just said right there, because the whole thing about you finding out about Dave Grohl's book and then deciding like you know what I have a good feeling about that I'm gonna download the audiobook and then you start listening to it and that jazzes you up. That is a different. The reason that's very educational for me that detail is that's different than I definitely have days where I want to ditch my plan but then I don't really go do things that I really want to do that make me happy. I will watch television mindlessly and not really fully enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah,
I will scroll social media and not really enjoy it.
yeah, yeah,
And there's this difference for me between really ditching a plan that I made because it just doesn't feel right in the moment but then going and doing something that legitimately feels good, like going outside and seeing the sunshine and looking at birds and
right.
how amazing they are,
Mm-hmm.
or finding something like that. Like what I hear in that story is like you in ditching the plan, you didn't just like flop down on the couch and like turn on the TV and just be like, ah, this day is wasted.
No, I was basically, as you saying, ditching the plan because there were these other things that had me fired up
Yeah,
that felt right. And so I
yeah,
was going with that, thinking in my head, like, oh, I'm playing and I should be working.
yeah.
And having that inner struggle, but then going like, okay, I am going to work. I'm just not going to do it at the time that I have
Well,
committed
that's the other
myself
thing
to.
too. Is like in that story that's really helpful for me. You didn't say I'm not working at all today on my business. I don't
Yeah.
care about my business. Screw my
Yeah.
business
No, it
today.
wasn't that.
Yeah, which again, I think so often in our society, especially, this happens for me, I know, and I know it happens for other people I talk to. Um, it's like we get frustrated with things sometimes. Like either we're not doing things the way, we have that voice in our head
Yeah. Oh,
that's like,
yeah.
you're
We all
not good
do.
enough, or
Yeah.
whatever. Or we're just frustrated with, a work situation or a personal relationship or something. And instead of sort of consciously deciding, you know what, I'm gonna take a moment and breathe here and try to get in touch with like what is my inner higher being saying? Like what is the universe trying to tell me right now? what we do is we go do something to try to distract ourselves from the
Yeah.
fact that we're frustrated,
Yeah.
or to tune out or kind of medicate that angry voice in our heads.
Yeah.
And we don't, and it's not the end of the world if somebody's like really frustrated with a situation
Yeah.
and they set a plan for themselves and they want to ditch the plan, and the best thing they can think of to do is go sit mindlessly in front of the television. Well, that's a lot better than a lot of things you could do.
Yeah. Right.
But the thing is, I think what people don't understand is like that's not the only option. You have an option to, and what I love about it, you told me this many times when I was your coaching client, and Abraham talks about it a lot on the recordings I've heard, that the universe is going every moment of every day. The law of attraction is always operating.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like sometimes we get this mentality of like, oh well, I'm off track today, so this day's done.
Not at
And it's
all.
like, no, the universe is like ready to like help you anytime you want to check in with it, anytime you want to check in with your higher self. Like, literally, if you've had like the worst day of your life, like everything has gone
Go take a
wrong.
nap.
But the take a nap thing is, I feel like sometimes I think it's brilliant that Abraham mentions that when
Yeah.
people say, oh, I had this horrible day and da da da, she's like, take a nap. But I think it's important to understand the take a nap isn't run away from this.
Not
It
at
isn't run
all.
away from your life. It's
Just
reset
yeah,
yourself so
resetting.
that you
Yeah.
can wake up in a different state of mind,
Yeah.
more likely to access your higher self, more likely to
Yeah. As
co-create
long as you don't wake up from the nap and then think about that thing that
what you did
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Which
that's the other.
that's
And then I
think
think
about
it's
that.
really important to say, because you're like, oh, access my inner being, my higher self. It's like, well, that I do most mornings right after when I wake up, use the little girl's room, come back to bed, and then listen to a meditation.
Yeah.
Because I do prayer and meditation every morning. Like this morning, I got up later and I'm like, oh, Nibbles needed to go out. And I was like, no, like he can wait. Like, do
Yeah.
your, because if I get up and start my day and don't do the meditation, I'm most likely not going to do it.
Yeah.
And what I have known over the years, because it's been since I think 2012 that I've started the practice of daily meditation. No, even longer. Anyways, um, that sets me for the day. Like
Mhm.
that is my preparation for the day emotionally, mentally, it just gets me focused in that. Hmm. Then I start my day and blah blah blah, and then all the thoughts come in and this and that, and then that's when my state kind of starts to fade off into the distance. But then I've built this foundation. I'm connected. My intuition is stronger. I hear those messages, do this, have that thought, those down, whatever it may be. And so I mean, yeah, I don't know what I was doing the night before. I was probably having fun because, like you were saying, you didn't even go to bed last night because you were so happy you couldn't sleep,
Yes.
so that.
I don't remember the last time that happened, but it was wonderful. Yeah, but I think I really take your point, and this is another thing. Like, um, it's I don't. I think it's not feasible for me to set a goal for myself of like I'm going to be connected to my inner being all day long, and I'm never
Yeah.
going to feel.
Good luck with that one, right?
It's like I feel like part of the mystery of our existence, where we're spirits, but we come into these human bodies and we have this human experience, is like part of it is dealing with like the frustration that comes from being human, and like how do you deal with that, and how do you like get in
Well, and
touch
the
with your higher self?
contrast, right? I mean, even talks about that.
Yeah,
We can only know what we do want by knowing what we don't want. And so
right.
when something happens that we don't want, then even if we're not consciously aware of it, energetically, what we do want exists, is
Yeah.
created in that moment.
But the gift that I got from your coaching, and also that Abraham gives people on a regular basis, is there are these tools like meditating first in the morning, or whatever makes you feel really
Yeah.
aligned and good in the morning, like listening
Right.
to your favorite song. Like I mentioned a couple episodes back, like for a while I was having a really tough time feeling good when I wake up, and so I started putting on the song "Let's Go Crazy" by Prince, and
Ah,
it's like there was no way I could listen to "Let's Go Crazy" and
right?
be sad and angry and
Yeah,
stressed and whatever. I
exactly.
was just like
Yeah.
into it. I was like,
Ah!
yeah. But those are sorts of, I think what you're talking about there is like practicing, like involving these things, like a little morning ritual of
Yep.
things that make us feel good,
Yep.
or when we really sense that we're off the rails, the day has been kind of a disaster, taking a nap or meditating,
Or like
nap is
sitting
easy.
by,
You know,
like it's
yeah,
different for everyone. Go outside, sip
yeah,
your favorite tea, be in
yeah.
nature, pet your cat. I don't know, watch your favorite show,
But the
you
more that
know,
you practice those things, the
exactly.
more you will be in you'll be in alignment, you'll be feeling good, you'll be,
And the more
co-creating.
we practice it, like it's like start to have those be our go-to things, then
Yeah,
when something does come up, we're more apt to go to those because we
yeah,
know they work.
right. Yeah,
And you've said it is a practice. Like every day I get up and it's like, oh, and I love that you brought up music because I do have that playlist.
yeah.
And now it's like, oh, when I'm making breakfast, and I hadn't been doing it for a while, and I was just noticing I wasn't feeling as good, and I'm like, I
Mm.
started listening to it and I was like, oh my god. So now it's like, Alexa, play my dance music playlist on shuffle because I don't like the alignment, the way in which
Track
they come
order.
in.
Track order.
Yeah, the track order. And so I want it to be like surprise me, and
A
so
professional musician just came out there. It's the track order.
thank you. And
You broke
before I
my heart.
know
You
it,
broke my heart, frankly, because you have no idea when musicians make an album, how much we agonize over the track order. No, I do that too. I think shuffling is a really cool. I, sorry, side topic, but I've come to find that setting my iPhone or whatever on shuffle for music is a really great way to talk to the universe, because the order of songs that comes up, I never feel like there's any randomness to it whatsoever. I don't care what the computer code says.
yeah, yeah,
It's like I usually end up hearing, like that's happened to me a lot lately where I've done shuffle and like a song that I've completely forgotten about, I haven't listened to it in years,
yeah,
comes on and I'm like, A, I love this song. B, I
yeah,
had forgotten about it. C, this is the perfect song to make me feel amazing right
mm,
now. Like I can't
yeah,
imagine a better, like it's hitting me at exactly the right way.
right.
So I'm all about shuffle as a
Yeah, I do
part
that
of how I'm
too. I
feeling.
have way too many songs on my phone to just play them in alphabetical order or what have you,
Yeah.
and so and that's boring. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely shuffle.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that was it. That was I'm glad we didn't say all that in friend time and then go, okay, let's start the podcast now. We've done that way too many times. All
Yes.
right. But thank you so much for listening to us. If you listen to the audio version of this episode on Spotify or Apple Podcast app or wherever you get your podcast, and thank you so much for watching us. If you watched us on the YouTube channel, again, if you can like us, subscribe to us, whatever your platform you're consuming us on, or consuming our wisdom, not us, on, allows you to do, we greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much. We wish you a happy, wonderful, joyous, and prosperous week ahead, and we'll see you next week on the next episode of Co-Creation Station. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.